Hello and welcome to San Diego's Historic Places, where you learn about the county's history. I'm Elsa Sevilla. The first people of African descent arrived in San Diego during the Spanish expeditions and during the Mexican period. You could find blacks in all levels of society, from successful entrepreneurs, farmers, newspaper publishers, coachmen, maids, and the list goes on. But probably the most remembered era was in the mid-1800s, when blacks began to arrive in San Diego's Far East County. The first blacks in San Diego are believed to have been of African descent, which came with the Spanish conquistadores in the early expeditions of the 15 and 1700s. As a result of the Moors' invasion of Spain, Africans had moved to Europe. Centuries later, they would travel to the New World. More people of African descent would arrive during Mexico's control of California. And around 1830s, there were 8 blacks. By 1850, there were 50 blacks in the San Diego area.
From this booklet comes what you see here on the wall. And these are only about 10 of about 70 graphics that documents and chronicles San Diego's African-American pioneers, going back to the 1800s.
Through the years, many of the early black pioneers would become prominent local leaders. In fact, there would be a California governor of African origin during the 1800s. Mesa College professor Chuck Ambers has studied black history for decades. Dr. Ambers tells me his attire is that of a black farmer that he wears for reenactments.
They were African Americans who had a saloon in what is now the state park. They became Mexican citizens, spoke Spanish, followed the Catholic religion, and they're the first that we know of that were African Americans here during the Mexican time period.
As the population continued to grow, the blacks who arrived in San Diego were either slaves, former slaves, or employees of whites. Local prominent civil rights leader and retired San Diego State University professor Carol Wayman knows the history of the black pioneers who settled in Julian.
The pioneers were in Julian to start with. And if you've looked at the hotel up there, you know that he and his wife built a hotel in 1887, built a hotel there, and named Robinson. And so Robinson built a hotel, and actually it's the oldest hotel in the whole state of California.
Dr. Wayman tells me of the first permanent black pioneer in Julian, Nathaniel or Nate Harrison, who was born a slave in Tennessee in 1820. These photos from the San Diego History Center show that Harrison would build his cabin on a 160-acre homestead he owned near Julian in 1848. Harrison would raise and sell livestock. But it was a former Confederate soldier, Drew Bailey, and his cousin Mike Julian, who actually founded the town of Julian.
Drury had, at some point, and it's not well documented, homesteaded all this land here, 160 acres. And he divided that up into town site lots. The whole 160 acres was divided up, hired a surveyor to do this.
By now, more black pioneers were arriving. One would discover gold. The discovery would attract many to the small town. Countless would prosper.
In 1869, you had an African American named Fred Coleman, who had been a part of the gold rush up in the San Francisco, Sacramento area. Following the geological formations and things, he came down to San Diego looking for gold. Went followed the San Diego River back up through the mountains to where it forms in the Julian, Cuyamaca area, and found gold in the river.
By the 1860s and 1870s, there were at least 5 black farmers in the Julian area. Fred Coleman would create the first gold rush in San Diego County. He would own more than 100 acres of land, run a farm, create a tent city for prospectors, and he would have other successful ventures. Black women were also profiting in Julian.
America Newton is one. She was an independent, single lady, entrepreneur. She started washing clothes for the miners. Had a buckboard, would take her buckboard around to the mining camps, wash the clothes of the miners.
America Newton would own an 80-acre homestead. Her cabin is still standing today. Amber and the students are currently conducting research to document more details about America. There are other local historians doing research on the early pioneers. David Lewis is a longtime Julian resident, and he's gathering facts from the past.
Albert Robinson was an African-American man who, it's thought, came here to the San Diego area with a guy named Levi Chase, who was he served in the Union Army in the Civil War, and I don't know the relationship they had.
Like many, David is fascinated with Albert Robinson. David believes he's traced Albert's travels from the East Coast to San Francisco, possibly traveling with a man named Levi Chase. Years later, census records put Albert in El Cajon in 1876. Robinson would marry Margaret Boyd from Temecula. The couple would open a restaurant and later build the Hotel Robinson in 1887, now known as the historic Julian Hotel.
I did find this passenger list from a ship leaving New York City in 1867 that has Levi Chase and wife on one line, and then above it's A. Robinson.
Yeah.
And this is
Albert Robinson.
Could be.
David's research began at the Julian Cemetery, where he's found a lot of the fun facts. During this time, David found the grave sites of the first black pioneers. He's also inherited these wonderful historic photos of the Robinsons, the restaurant, and also of the hotel.
This is probably one of my favorite pictures, but I think the cat moved. It made Albert move, and he's a little blurry.
Yeah, because look how
But it's a great photograph of
Margaret looks.
And see her ring.
Yes. Yeah, I like the hat. As for David, his fascination about the past has him searching for more answers about the first pioneers who settled in Julian.
I guess what's interesting about Julian and about Drury Bailey, these were ordinary people, but they did what we think are extraordinary things. You know, how did they do that? You know, where did Drury get the idea to start a town at 26 years old? Why did the Robinsons think they could build a hotel and make it work?